Welcome to the Mortgage Broker Podcast, tailor-made for Canadian mortgage industry professionals. Proudly presented by A Better Way Mortgage Group, this podcast is your trusted source for insider insights, market updates, and strategies to elevate your career in the ever-evolving world of mortgage brokering. Whether you're a seasoned broker with A Better Way Mortgage Group or an industry enthusiast looking to stay ahead, our episodes are designed to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the Canadian mortgage space. All right, we're back for another episode of the Mortgage Broker Podcast, and today we have Mike De Eyre, president of Mortgage Architects, a close friend of ours. We've worked very closely over the years. Mortgage Architects is actually a big part of our business. It's the network where A Better Way Mortgage Group holds its license, and it is honestly a significant partner in our business. And we're going to talk about a lot of that today. We're going to start off with just an introduction to Mike. Jason's here with me as well. Mike, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, you got an interesting past coming into the industry, being on the bank side. I want to touch on that, but why don't we start there? Just maybe a brief overview of kind of your journey in the industry.
Well, I find like in the mortgage industry, everyone kind of falls into it one way or another. There's not a lot of high schoolers saying when I grow up I'm going to be in the mortgage business. Sure. It's everyone has their own story, and I'm no different. Like my background was more in marketing and events and that world. And there was a company called Maple Trust that was hiring like a marketing coordinator to do that sort of stuff for their business, and got that job, and that introduced me to the mortgage world. And John Webster was the CEO there, and over time I got to a couple years doing that marketing role, I got interested in the business, like what's this all about, and got to know John and some of the other leadership team there, and then got an opportunity to become a BDM. So then I was right in it, and in a business development role. From there, it just progressed. I, found my footing doing that and enjoyed it. And then I actually went back to take a different marketing role. By this time, Scotiabank had purchased Maple Trust. So we were now part of Scotiabank. And, I ran marketing for the mortgage, business lines, like the broker channel, as well as the proprietary sales force. Launched a cross-sell initiative, and then eventually became a regional VP at Scotiabank, overseeing the broker channel for Prairies and for BC.
That's kind of a cool way to kind of get in. You're right. Like nobody chooses to be in this business, or dreams of it, so to speak. But how was that transition of like going from marketing and then learning like the actual guts of finance and how to everything that goes along with that?
It's interesting because and that of course was my concern, and credit to John. Like he came and said, basically like tapped me on the shoulder and said, we have a job available, him and Kevin Carroll, and I said, well, I don't really, thank you, but I don't really know anything about mortgages. And John said, like, you'll learn that. He's like, you're a smart guy. Like what we look for is the relationship part of it, and just it's like you can learn mortgages, and I think that's true, right? Like it's not, there's a lot to learn. Don't get me wrong, but it's I still, like, when I hire to this day, like I try to take that same approach, because I think people can learn the subject matter and become experts at it, but you can't teach people the other side of it, which is just the relationships and just how to manage your business. And I like, you guys know, we're in such a relationship based business that is the most important part, is to know how to do that side of things.
So when you went from the BDM role back to the marketing role, did you miss that kind of relational component that you're having, like on the day-to-day side with the brokers, that kind of helped trigger you wanting to go back to the RVP role? Or was it
in some way but I think like when I went back into marketing, after being a BDM, I was still a little more ingrained in the business. Yeah. Like it wasn't, when I first started, it was more just, I'm sending out promotional items, or, just doing the event planning stuff. The second time around, it was a little more of a senior role, and more ingrained in with the management team in, developing marketing strategies for the business. So I never felt out of it at that point, but I did want to get right back in. Like I wanted to get back out on the field. Like, that's how I felt like I was in, it was support staff in the front office or whatever, and I wanted to be back on the field playing the game. So yeah.
You mentioned like relationship piece, like that's something we're talking about a lot, especially with like AI and all this advancements there, and like just the heightened heightened importance on being able to build good relationships and be likable. That's obviously a big piece of your success. Scotia as well, like just the time there, that's been a big piece of their business historically, is just everyone there is one, such a likable individual, very personable, but also like the event side of things, which is where you had a lot of your experience coming in, the event planning, the marketing side of things. How much of a component was that to, one, building your relationships, but also just building good relationships for the bank?
I think it's huge. And it really, like, there's a lot of businesses like that, and we're definitely one of them, where you don't have these massive differences between, there are massive differences, but like at the end of the day, we're all doing mortgages, right? And who ends up doing business together is very, very much relationship driven. And I think, that was an approach I learned from John and others from the beginning. And I think the rest follows if you have that good foundation, and it's certainly helped me throughout my career, and I think it holds true for most people.
Well, I was listening to a recent podcast that John Webster was on, and he mentioned those rewards trips that Scotia would take the brokers on. That was such a good platform to extract the brokers from the BRMs and all that, and really get feedback. And the feedback that the brokers would provide to the leadership teams at Scotia, it was always received well. And what the leadership team did is they implemented a lot of stuff that the brokers were saying, and that just got that buy-in and that relationship even stronger, and built it to what it was today.
Well, that was always the one component, the one business component of those trips, right? Those trips were first and foremost reward and recognition trips to say, hey, thanks for being such a good partner. Thanks for the amount of business you did with us. We want to, go take you somewhere nice, have some fun, that sort of thing. But there was always that one business component that you mentioned, Jay, which was like we did a market research component, and we had someone come in to facilitate it. And for years, there'd be no one from Scotia in the room. We'd, start the session, say a few things, give some business updates, then we'd all leave the room, and there'd be just brokers in there with an independent market research facilitator that would say, hey, tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly about how we're doing. And then, a couple weeks after the trip, we'd assemble the management team in our offices, and we'd get that presentation on here's what you're doing right and here's what you're doing wrong. And then it became, okay, like which of the parts we're doing wrong, why, what happened, what went wrong, and how can we fix it? And, and that really did guide us for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than asking for feedback, receiving the feedback, and doing nothing with it. So the fact that we were taking things and actually implementing the things that brokers were saying, like, I mean, and I could repeat myself over and over, that was, in my opinion, the basis of why Scotia continued to grow and does continue to be a leader in the space.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, as a broker going on those trips, it felt good to know who we're working with at the leadership level, and like getting to meet John, getting to meet yourself, all the others that are part of that organization. It makes it feels like a privilege to be able to work with those individuals and be at that institution and be able to work with them like we did. But then you also start to think like, okay, I actually care about these relationships. I'm going to make sure I do my best. And not that I don't always think that way, or brokers don't always think that way, but you don't have that same sort of connection with the other banks. Like, it just doesn't exist, right? And that was such a huge piece for us. And like, was that, I would assume that was part of the thinking on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a philosophy, right? Like it could be very easy for our business to be transactional, right? Where, you're a broker, you have a deal, you pick a lender, send it to them, and your relationship doesn't expand beyond just doing deals like that together. But I think your point, like it really brings it to a different level when you know each other as people and you have relationships and you're invested in each other's success. And, at the Scotia side, we wanted to help A Better Way be successful and succeed and solve problems for you, solve hurdles with the Scotia model, whatever. And likewise, you guys wanted us to succeed. You weren't sending deals that you thought wouldn't get done, or, you weren't wasting our time. So we became, we were friends, had a good business relationship, and we were genuinely invested in helping each other to succeed. And I think that was the key to a lot of the success with that model. Yeah.
Okay, let's transition a little bit here. So I want to get kind of in your mind on like just your journey in regards to leadership and vision. But part of that, just we have to address the fact that you're no longer with Scotia.
longer
Obviously,
with
it's
Scotia.
been quite some time now too.
10 months as of tomorrow.
Wow. Wow, that goes by quick. I remember when we got the text message that it was happening. We were very excited for obvious reasons because of our, we're working that much more closely together now in more of, not that we weren't in a partnership type arrangement with Scotia, but it's much different on this side. And we'll get into that, but like why the change and how are things going on that front?
Yeah, so I joined Mortgage Architects 10 months ago as of tomorrow, and honestly, I wasn't looking for a change. I was happy with Scotia. I got asked that a lot, but there was it wasn't like there was a reason that I wanted to leave. I was very happy. There's great people there, very supported, and super lucky just to have that experience that I did over 17 years. But basically the opportunity to lead Mortgage Architects became available. Dustin had decided he was moving on, and as I've been told, Gary Morris made a short list with his team, and he had my name on it, and then started talking to people about it, and eventually one day the phone rang and it was him, and he said, "What do you think?" And you've experienced the Gary sell before, and he's very persistent, and I had known Gary and DLCG as a whole for many years, right? Like same thing, just working as business partners with them. And it goes back to a lot of what we were just talking about, that we had built up these relationships over time. And I've always had a ton of respect for Gary and a ton of respect for the whole DLCG team, Chris, Eddie, James. Like they just, on the Scotia side, we always just admired the way that they did business and the way they treated their partners and everything. So, so I just thought it made sense, and like I wasn't unhappy with Scotia, but I felt like it was I was comfortable, right? To be honest, and I think that is one thing that everyone needs to make sure they're always a little bit uncomfortable, right? And I think that was a big driving force, was that I felt this was an opportunity that I wasn't going to be too uncomfortable. I wasn't going into completely uncharted territory. I knew that there was a lot of the things I was doing at Scotia could be transferable into this role. But I mean, I'd been on the lender side for my whole career, so jumping into running a brokerage and a network was, it was something. I knew there'd be challenges, and I thought that would be a good thing, and I was ready to take on a new challenge.
Well, I think there's discomfort, obviously, having to make a move from lender into the broker side, but there's so many parallels to your point about, even just the people that you're associating with on a regular basis. Now, those are the same people. You're just kind of leading them in a different direction. But, and I know with the Architects Network, I mean, they have some of the best brokers in the industry as well. So I got to imagine a lot of those people that you were leaning on at the very beginning were people that were familiar, that you knew from the trips in the past and all of that kind of stuff. That must have made that transition.
Yeah, well, you guys are a great example,
easy, right?
And honestly, that was another part of it for me, to plug Mortgage Architects here for a second, is that as a lender, lenders talk. There was many of opportunities where all the different lenders get in the rooms together, and you're talking, good relationships, even though we're competitors. And every network, every large brokerage, we knew, who they all were, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And Mortgage Architects always had such a good reputation. And just the way, from leadership to the individual brokers to the franchise within it, they're just, it was known just for being, a really good, strong culture. Everyone takes care of each other, even within different teams and everything. And clean business, no tolerance for anything but that. So I think that attracted me to it as well. That when I started talking to Gary about the role and started to think, okay, so who's with Mortgage Architects, and seeing a better way, and seeing all these franchises and teams that I had just gotten to know over the years, had great relationships with, and I liked, frankly, right? That's a big. You want to work with people you like. So that actually excited me to say, you know what, this would be great to join this team.
Yeah, I thought it was incredible with just kind of staying on that architect's path. Is I don't think people realize just how big Mortgage Architects actually is, because the brokers and the people inside it, it's almost like a boutique kind of family-ish feel to it, where, to your point, they're all kind of supporting each other and helping each other. So yeah, I mean, that certainly makes that transition point happy and easy.
Yeah, definitely it does. Yeah, it's we're big, we're across the country, but I totally agree with you that there still is that boutique feel to it, and I don't think that exists everywhere else, that even if you're in a different team and you're in a different province, you probably know some of the other teams just because of our events and our and even like our internal Facebook group and just all these things that we have just to keep in touch and keep a community going.
I mean, I could say for certain, like we've tried to replicate that in our own sense at a better way and just build upon that. So, not to exclude, like we love what Mortgage Architects brings our team and tapping into that, but also having our own version of that as well.
Yep.
It's been replicated through, experiencing it through Mortgage Architects and DLCG for that matter. Like, even looking at, DLC, which, we have a franchise with DLC as well. And then you look at MCC, going on those trips as a group, like feels like it's coming to a point where all of DLCG is starting to feel that cultural type, together, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because when those three brands first came together, it wasn't like that, right? They were very guarded and
I think that's I always tell people we have it the best of both worlds, right? It's really great that we have three distinct brands, right? And they're very different from each other. And that's kind of the point, right? It's three different models and three different networks, but all part of the same parent company. And we each get the benefit of being part of a network that we feel, best supports us as individuals and so forth. But then we can also do that DLCG stuff together. And it's pretty cool. Like, I mean, we have our conference coming up this fall with all three brands. And I was at the one as a lender partner in Mexico 2 years ago. And just to see, I mean, I've been to a million events in the mortgage industry. I've never seen anything like that. There was like 750 people or something, all the CEOs from the major financial institutions were like, it was just, it was something.
And that's a big deal too, when, every single CEO from every institution that we work with shows up, but also just like on the topic of events, it wasn't necessarily something we wanted to get into today, but it's a great topic because that event is a must visit event, in my opinion. You think of the speakers, James Clear was there at the last year, like some fantastic speakers. And that makes it worth it too, right? Like just to ensure you're getting top notch.
It's the scale,
content.
and that's what I mean. Like with that best of both worlds thing, you have your own network, but being part of such a big parent company, you really can get stuff from that sort of scale. And it's not just events, right? It's lender relationships, it's all sorts of different things. But you're right. Like just when you have a 700 person massive event, you're gonna get some pretty high caliber speakers that you wouldn't get if you were attending a 30 person event. Totally, it's just the reality, right?
Totally. Okay, so I wanted to just touch on you've come into this position and you're very corporately polished at this point versus when
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
well, like just it's I think it bodes well for your role in it, and it has been, I believe, a big piece of your success coming in. Not that Dustin wasn't corporately polished, but you're very different individuals with different leadership skills, and I found coming in with the banking experience has actually brought us a lot of value, especially in this year with FinTrack and all the changes that we had in our business, which were very new to anyone on this side in the broker channel, but not new to you. Maybe you can kind of just touch on like the journey over the last 10 months, some of the leadership skills that you were able to, deploy and assist us and bring us value, but also just going through the challenges like FinTrack and whatnot.
It's interesting. I agree with you. I mean, it's something maybe I took for granted because I was 17 years at Maple and Scotia, and you kind of I didn't realize how unique it was to work in like a massive corporation like that and start to understand all the mechanics behind it. I just thought that's the way the world worked, and then coming here, it was really eye-opening to be like, oh wow, it's not like how it is in a bank everywhere else. But I think it's an interesting time for our industry because I think we're really being forced to grow up as an industry, and I think it's a good thing. And I think it underscores the value that, going back to what we were just talking about, that a big parent company and, an established network and frankly, in larger, franchises and brokerages like you guys, how important it is to have that structure because things are getting really complex, right? The regulatory environment is just, becoming more and more, complex and there's more things that brokers need to think about. So I think that is quickly becoming one of the biggest value adds of networks and brokerage leadership is being able to deal with those things, solve those problems, explain how to navigate all that. If you're a broker and agent, you just want to focus on doing your own business. And AML is a perfect example of that. So we have FinTrack, a brand new regulatory body for the mortgage broker space. They've been regulating lenders for a long time, banks. I was very familiar with FinTrack from my time at Scotia, and they've regulated realtors for a long time, and others. But the mortgage broker space was the missing link. So it's a big deal. I mean, it's I understand completely why it's necessary. If you think about just the amount of money moving around that our industry is facilitating, like of course we need to make sure we have controls in place for to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing, and that's what FinTrack does. So I think it's necessary, but let's not kid ourselves. It's burdensome, right? And there's a lot to learn and a lot to work through. And I think it's really important that we provide tools and technology and solutions to manage it.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, talk about getting your MBA in presidency. I mean, that first 10 months, I mean, having FinTrack come in, I think, even as broker owners, this is one of the most complex times to be in this business. Things are changing a hell of a lot more rapidly than they ever have. And, kudos to you and being able to lead the group through that whole process. And I know that, just multiple calls and emails and questions and uncertainty that's coming from our group and the broker network at large. I mean, and that's part of the reason too why we find so much value with yourself and the DLCG is that everybody was on top of this and giving us all the resources and all of the guidance that we needed to make sure that we were safe and our brokers are safe. So yeah, I mean, it's incredible the pace that you've had to make changes to in your first 10 months.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I mean, let's be honest, like obviously we'd rather be focusing on things like that generate revenue and business growth and everything, and not just managing regulatory compliance. But it's reality, and it's always going to be a reality. And I think, if we are doing our part as a network partner, then that's exactly what the kind of thing we need to deliver on. And like, I'm a strong believer. I mean, there's networks, there's brokerages out there that their philosophy is we'll leave you alone. Like, that's like, we'll stay out of your way. And honestly, I think it's much more value add to say, we'll be your partner. We'll help you solve this. We'll give you solutions. We'll walk this walk with you instead of just saying, we'll leave you alone. I just don't see the value in that sort of offering.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, totally. And it's part of like where I want to go to now is just around leadership in this business. And this episode is a part of our new series, Behind the Leader. And being a leader in that space when it comes to compliance, FinTrack, like it's lacking in our industry. Like there's brokerages that just haven't taken this seriously. Believe it or not, it's just, we're seeing it every day. Like, on the recruitment front, competitors are saying things that don't align with what FinTrack is telling us we need to do, right? And I mean, that will all come out in time when the audits and whatnot start to come. And again, not trying to go there. We've been there a lot this year, and that's been a hot topic. Yeah. But it just goes to show you, it's just like as a group, we're all, taking that leadership to do the right thing. And that's kind of what I want to go into now is just around your operational leadership and what the day-to-day responsibilities and, critical decisions that you oversee look like. And maybe we can kind of just start there. Sure. Like, what does a typical day look like right now for you in this role?
Every day is different is the quickest answer, but it's, And I mean, I'll be honest, like one of my biggest challenges over the past year has been learning how to prioritize. And I think I'm getting better with that every day as I'm more and more ingrained in the business, but there's a lot of things to focus on. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And you got to strike the right balance, right? Like, so I have, obviously there's the broker facing part of things and that's recruitment and retention and just helping brokers solve day-to-day issues and grow and be more successful. And I think that is the most important part for me, because I think at the end of the day, if we're not adding value, then what are we doing here? So like that's the number one thing for me. And I try to reinforce that with myself every day that, and I think of it in those terms, like, what did I do today? How many hours did I spend actually helping brokers or, just helping the business grow? But the reality is there's all the back end stuff as well, all the operations. And, we have the full service brokerage side to mortgage architects too. So we have a payroll team, we have a compliance team, we have broker resources. There's, we work very closely with Kate and the marketing team and Dave and the operations team. And there's just, making everything run every day in itself is another big part of the role. So.
Well, you mentioned that in the previous role, you started to get a little bit comfortable and like you're kind of running on autopilot. I got to imagine now in the presidency seat, you have so many different things from all different directions coming to you. So, I mean, have you found it challenging to kind of adapt to that and prioritizing? Is that something that you're really having to work on, or is it kind of coming naturally to you?
Yeah, I think it was a challenge, but I think I think I'm getting more comfortable each and every day with it. But it goes back to what you're talking about. Like banks are very structured, right? And no matter what role you're in a bank, like you're not. It's just there's such a large framework around you, and you're never making a decision by yourself. Really, there's always a large group of people involved in everything in different departments, and it's almost like you take it for granted, but there's almost like unlimited resources. Like if you want to do something, there's you send it over to legal, and the legal team reviews, and it's like you send it through compliance, you send your new contracts over to procurement, and it's like that was jarring to me coming to this company where it's really we're compared to a bank, of course, much smaller, and yeah, and so a lot of that stuff, like whatever we're working on, is really it's our small team, and fortunately, like we have such good people on the leadership team, and everyone's so motivated. They move fast, they're smart, and that motivates me to just manage it and move forward as fast and as good as we can. So
I gotta think all the stuff that you would push off to other departments. Now you're the guy that it's all getting pushed onto. So
yeah, exactly.
What a change.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's it. I think one challenge is just being proactive instead of reactive. I'm sure that is for everybody. That's true. I know for brokerage agents that's true. But it's important to be proactive, right? And I try to take that approach where literally I'm looking at my calendar each day, being like, what am I doing that's proactive? Like I'm reaching out to someone and checking in, or I'm speaking to a potential new recruit, or versus just I can easily be reactive for 12 hours a day, no problem.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff to weigh in on, but you have to force yourself to say, okay, at some point I got to move things forward, right?
Hey everyone, Dean here. Quick timeout from the episode to share with you the ABW Tuesday Mortgage Memo, your weekly market highlights sent directly to your inbox every Tuesday. This is certainly one you're not going to want to miss, so make sure to sign up now. You can do so with a link in the show notes, or you can head to joinabw.ca and sign up there. This is a high-level summary of market developments, regulatory updates, and housing trends every Tuesday. So hope you enjoy it, and back to the show. Actually, that's a great piece. Like we talk about time tracking all the time. Like lately, we've been doing that pretty religiously, and it's just every half an hour, making sure you know what you even did, right? Like just writing it down keeps you conscious to ensure you're doing, the right things that are moving the needle. Moving on from that, like vision, strategy. Obviously, the vision and strategy, there's like the parent company that you all collectively drive some of that. But what does the process look like from just setting organizational goals and just ensuring the teams are aligning, not just from the internal MA side, but also the DLCG side? Like, how does that all come together for you?
I think a large part of my role is bridging that gap, not this gap, or like just between the DLCG, is a publicly traded company, and obviously there's corporate objectives, corporate goals, and I think part of my role is interpreting those and then understanding the role MA plays within that, which is a big one, and then in turn setting our own goals and setting goals for my team, and setting goals, and communicating our goals and our vision out to the network. So I think that's a big part of it. But in terms of when you go into like, okay, what are the actual goals for MA? I think I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel with MA, because we have something really special, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I went out early in the first few months after starting, my number one focus was just talking to brokers, getting feedback. And that's still my number. Like that's far from done. I'm still love getting out there and just, having conversations, understanding, what could we do better? It's a great question. Rate us out of 10, and then what do you need to make us a 10 if the rating's not 10? And just learning from our brokers is what we need to see. But again, it's not reinventing the wheel. I think we have a special brand. A lot of it is maintaining and defending the brand and making sure we can grow, but grow in a way that stays true to MA's culture and what we're all about. And then, I think part of it too is pandemic really shifted things a lot, right? And whether it's just the in-person events and going back to our earlier conversation about the relationship nature, it shifted a lot of just operations, like, people working from home instead of being in the office, brokers changing the way that they do business and meet clients. So there's still some of that navigation going on, is how do we get back in a post-COVID world, and where do we strike the balance? What parts of remote work and all the things that came from the pandemic were positive and we should continue, versus, what can we bring back? How can we start doing more events again? How can we start feeling more connected again? So that's actually been a ongoing theme with the conversations I've been having with brokers since starting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, even so, like, just around innovation, adapting, like, there's the COVID piece, there's the FinTrack piece, and now I feel like we're so close to some monumental changes in our industry with tech. I mean, maybe that's just because I'm buried in it, and that's all, like, I'm very interested in it, especially when it comes to AI. Like, how do you drive innovation within mortgage architects, but also what does that look like from a DLCG whole, and things like AI and just different tech advancements? Is that something that's like a hot topic right now?
Absolutely it is. And I think, that is another area where I think we're so fortunate as part of DLCG, in that we have Newton as owned by the same parent company. So we have our own technology arm of the company and can work in lockstep. So it's not us waiting to see what external tech company, like vendors, mortgage industry tech companies do, and then, sign up with them or partner with them. It's literally like we're driving it from the inside. And it's very exciting stuff. I mean, we have some great leadership over there at Newton, Jeff Willis and Steve Mitchell, and their whole teams are very much in the thick of this. The AI thing, I'm very interested and excited about too. I would say it is still early stage in terms of fully understanding where this is all going to go with our industry. There's you probably had those conversations where you're sitting around just spitballing, and I mean, the world can be changed. Absolutely. It's a question of what sticks and who comes out ahead.
I mean, I got a lot of wishes, and I was just actually talking to Jeff Willis before this this podcast, and I'm probably not his favorite person because I'm always asking him to change something or add something. And that, I mean, that's the complexity of tech. Is it's just, a simple idea to us to actually implement on the tech side is certainly not simple and takes a lot of steps and whatnot. And
I've always been that guy, by the way, going back to school. Like, I'm always the guy that works for the business and says, well, why don't we just do this? Can't be that hard. Like, and the tech. I think I probably have a reputation with tech guys, tech people around the world.
But what I do agree with you, and I'm very blessed to be a part of this organization, is the fact that they're, looking at scale, looking at the ability to do these things. It's really only going to happen at this level when you're this big to be able to justify the investment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the conversations I was having with Jeff earlier is like, these new tech companies get to a point off of, the first, beta product. And then until they have enough users, they can't excel it from there. And it kind of just stays stagnant in that one spot. And that's the beauty of what, I was running these ideas by Jeff, and he's like, he's already there, moving there, right? Yeah. But it's going to take time. And, he tempers that down, obviously. But again, just the importance of that piece of like just being able to drive the innovation because of the scale is significant. And I think that's something like listeners, whether they're with DLCG or not, that's a big piece to comprehend.
It's going to define the next 3 to 5 years. I think really is going to be when tech innovation really takes off.
Totally. And it's like, from a recruitment standpoint, the conversations we're having with say people at other brokerages or other networks is it's more of a tech talk than anything now, opposed to all the good things that come with mortgage architects, DLCG. A big piece of it is now the tech velocity, what's happening there, how's it moving forward. Hey, maybe there's things that, negative things that have come up in the past that with their previous experiences that they're not into, those have likely been resolved and changed. And then, you talk about velocity 3 and the innovation, the things that are coming down the pipe. It's all just going to continue to get better, and it's not going to stay stagnant. And I think that's the biggest piece to push, right?
I agree. And, the one thing that I would say is with this conversation always comes the inevitable, like, well, what does this mean for brokers, right? And it's like, are we being replaced by AI, or is everyone, will clients just apply online for their mortgage? And I'm a firm believer that brokers will always be around and have a place, because no matter how advanced the tech gets, it's such a big decision for consumers that like it's for the foreseeable future. I do not see it moving to an entirely online dehumanized process like so many other
I couldn't agree
transactions might be.
I honestly couldn't agree more. And we were talking about this last night, just like thinking of my kids. I have young kids. My oldest is 8 years old. And like the skill that these kids are going to need to have is like human connection, and like just ultimately being that person that can have those conversations, be face to face, and ultimately sell.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be the biggest skill set. Where you think of the past, like you think of the nerds as an example. The nerds are always the ones that got rich down the road, right? Well, in theory, like you don't really need an IQ these days with where AI is going.
Yeah,
you just need to be able to sell and be likable.
Exactly.
And people are going to get to the point where even like I was just talking to another tech guy this morning, like even just the face to face on Zoom. It's going to get to a point where you don't even know if you're talking to an actual human, right? So it's just back to like being able to be that human connection. And if AI gets to a point where it is taking over, key components of our business, it's going to be brokers that are using it are going to be the ones replacing the brokers that aren't.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
And like it's like brokers have gotten to this point where maybe they don't meet clients in person very much, if at all. Well, I could see that reversing because people want to make sure they're actually speaking to a human.
Yeah.
And getting things done properly from a human perspective, and then all the other things are taken care of behind the scenes from an AI perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, just for me, simplifying this, and we spoke about this last night, is that IQ was the big thing that people needed in the past to grow and excel through careers, but AI's kind of taken that and replaced that a little bit, or a lot actually, but what we really need to focus on is the emotional intelligence piece. How are we relating to our customers, to our business partners? And if we can kind of figure out that piece, I think that's where we're going to excel. And I mean, another podcast I was listening to is just the complexity of mortgages and the emotional decision that comes with buying a property. Husband sometimes thinks different than wife, and there's not kind of that immediate reaction. There's always going to be a place and a need, in my opinion, for the broker and for somebody to kind of talk through those emotional pieces with the clients.
Exactly. I don't think that's going to change,
no.
At least not in the foreseeable future for us.
No, and I mean, I've been on the front lines of recruitment for quite a long time, and that the conversation, to Dean's point, has drastically changed from, do I have lender access and do I have top comp? Well, that should be a given with wherever you're going to go. Yep. But that conversation now has completely changed to the technology aspect, the efficiency aspect. What can you do to enhance the business? Like that is where the conversations are driving now.
Totally. Yeah, I want to go at a different angle here, and more so around like just the relationship with being a leader, being in leadership roles, and kind of get into like the guts of a broker, and where does that relationship, best. Like where can we collaborate best as a broker? So speaking to a broker, what should brokers understand about effective collaboration with a leader? Because that's not always just the bitching and complaining, like where can we actually find some synergies there? And like what should a broker take away from best practices there?
I don't think it's anything different than just general relationships and general, life lessons and the way we should all conduct ourselves, period. Right. And it's, just trying to understand others' point of view, trying to be, have empathy and understanding for what others are going through and what their challenges are. And that's kind of an approach I always try to take, is put myself in the other person's shoes. Even if, you're negotiating something, whatever, and trying to really understand what motivates them and what's important to them. And I think the most successful relationships are when both sides understand that and work together. And it's anytime I see someone taking the approach of me and I'm only fighting for what I want and I'm going to give no leeway into what someone else wants, and this doesn't just go for my example, it could be like broker lender is a huge one, right? Like broker underwriter, like it's just it never goes well. And the most successful, like with very few exceptions, I would say, if you look at any super successful individual broker, they've internalized this and they're very good at relationships, and they treat their business partners with respect, and they demand respect in return. And it really is the only way to go.
I couldn't agree more. It kind of answers my next question, but I'm going to try to spin this in a different way. Like, so as a leader, what would be some, key qualities or where would you say, a broker could maybe differentiate themselves in the competitive landscape to having a relationship with a leader. And I'll shorten that by saying, like, a lot of brokers, especially at the size we're at now, and the size especially at DLCG's at, is they may feel like they're forgotten or unknown when it comes to the leadership team. Like, what is a good way that, like, a broker could, be visible to a leader and start to build those relationships without maybe just expecting the leader to come to them?
That's a good question. And I mean, I think going back to what we're talking about, like, I do think that the most important part of my job is being there for our networking for brokers, and regardless of size or, tenure or whatever. So I personally would say a lot of that would be on me or on my team to make sure, they feel that connection. But I get it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we have just under 2,000 brokers. Like, that's it's hard to talk to everyone on a regular basis. I think all I would say is that people shouldn't be shy, right? And I think when we were talking about relationship versus transactional, where a lot of people get tripped up, I think, is you wait until you have an issue, right?
Yeah.
And it's and that's hard. And I mean, obviously, we will try to help out and do what we can for everyone, regardless of what the issue is. But you do see that time where the first time you ever hear from someone is 911 emergency. I need help. I'm this happening with this lender or this other broker, like whatever. There's a problem to solve, and I would say it's always easier to solve problems when you already know the person, know what makes them tick, have a relationship. So, I would recommend to people, don't be afraid to just, say hello, just have a chat at an event, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, back to one of your, we were talking about the DLC conference that's coming up in Whistler this year. You have the top CEOs from a lot of our lending partners. You have yourself, the leadership team, Gary, Chris there. Like, these people are available at events. And to me, it blows my mind when you have brokers that just don't go and they don't show up.
That's it.
And one of the best things, in my opinion, like, I appreciate you wanting to take the onus on yourself, but this is our business too as brokers. And it's up to you to go and introduce yourself to those people, follow up with them, build a relationship. If you have the ability to go to a conference and meet 8 to 10 to 20 of your lending key partners, that is 100% something that you should be taking advantage of as a broker. And if you're just sitting behind your computer screen expecting people to know who you are without reaching out to develop that relationship yourself, you're completely missing the boat, in my opinion. Every single event you should be going to, you should be attending. And in those events, that's where you build your relationships, and that's how you become known.
Absolutely. And it's not just leadership, right? It's to everyone. It's to colleagues. It's to other brokers in their areas. Like, I think, showing up, whether it's an in-person event or, I do a president's call every month on Zoom, and it's an hour, and usually have guests from lenders, and it's great. We usually get, between 100 and 200 brokers that join. And it generally becomes an interactive conversation, and those people I get to know, right? So I think investing the time to do those sorts of things is important. A bit of it is our earlier conversation about proactive versus reactive, because that's a proactive thing. And I completely understand that you're, busy as a broker, it's, so do I spend an hour in this call, or do I take the afternoon off and go to this event? Or, do I just keep up with my emails and files coming in and everything? And it goes back to that discussion of it. Sometimes you got to make that conscious decision that, no, I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to do something that's proactive.
Well, just to add to that point, and the common excuse is always, well, I'm too busy. I'm buried in the files and I can't attend the president's call, or I can't go to this conference. I'll tell you factually that the busiest brokers within the A Better Way group are at every conference.
Yep, absolutely.
And the busiest brokers and lead planners within Mortgage Architects are always the same faces on those president's calls. So you wonder why they're excelling in the business. It's because they are taking the time to invest in their business and their own personal development.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
All right, this has been a great chat. I want to look to wrap up here. It's gone by really quickly. This has been really good. So thank you for that. I want to get your vision on one, the future of the mortgage industry, more so like maybe emerging trends or innovations that you see, and then how does that parlay into Mortgage Architects and DLCG?
Yeah, well, it's a big question. I mean, there's all sorts of different dynamics and different things all happening together. First of all, I'm quite optimistic on the near term, the next few years for our industry. I think, at this moment in time, or January 2025, like we have a lot of things moving in the right direction, whether it's, interest rates on the decline. There was changes to the mortgage rules, which are on the whole beneficial to our business. And there's, a whole lot of renewals coming up. So there's a lot of things that are good for our business, and we do expect to see volumes increase from last year, and I think that trend will continue. There's headwinds as well. I mean, as we're recording this, we're waiting to see what Trump's going to do with tariffs, and there's some uncertainty for sure. But I think overall, I'm optimistic. I think we talked about AI and technology, but certainly I think that's going to be a defining trend of the next few years for our industry. Is we've seen a lot of tinkering with technology and new entrants coming in, but we haven't seen that monumental shift yet. But I think that will be coming. And again, I think groups like ours that have that technology embedded in the business are very well positioned for that. And then the other theme that I think we're going to see specifically with lenders is looking at the broker channel, less about a mortgage origination channel and more about a customer acquisition channel, right? And, I could speak from experience at Scotia that had quickly become the priority for the bank. They weren't looking at the broker channel as, how we can get more mortgages on the books. It's, 70% or so of customers are brand new to the bank, and that's a big opportunity to franchise new customers. So I think we're going to see more lenders adopt that thinking, and that could have impact on how we're paid. It could have impact on, how to get access to lender. It could have impact on just all sorts of things. And I think there's opportunity to partner on that. And I don't think it at its core is something that we're butting heads. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It could result in, new banks coming into the space. We'll see what happens, but it's exciting.
I couldn't agree more. I'm happy to hear you say that. It's definitely something I've been thinking about for quite some time. And it should bring more banks into the channel, because that's ultimately what they want. It's all of the products that they can push and sell and give value for, but also it's going to keep banks in the channel. Like that's a big piece, right? It has to be profitable for our partners. So I'm glad you said that. It's a good piece. I guess last point, I wouldn't mind getting your advice on future leaders, whether that's in the broker channel or on the bank side, the monoline side, private lending side. Like, what is maybe some advice that you would give to a future leader or somebody that's looking to, maybe move into a leadership role?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about getting out of your comfort zone, and I think that's important. I think honestly, it's like a summary of all the themes we discussed today is really what my answer to that question would be. It's get in your comfort zone. It's making sure you're prioritizing relationships, and because it is a relationship business, and you can be, super talented and a hard worker, but if you're not networked, you're going to eventually hit that roadblock. That's just the reality of it in this business, right? So you have to put yourself out there, get to know people, and both on all facets of the business: brokers, networks, leadership, lenders, suppliers. Good thing is it's actually not that big an industry once you kind of figure out who's who and all that, and show up at events. It's and there's a ton of good people in it. Like, you'll have a lot of fun doing it, right? It's we're very fortunate, I think, that we do have an industry full of great people. So getting networked, and then trying new things. I mean, it's important, I think, to experience a few different angles in the business as you're progressing into more leadership roles. And like I said, like having that lender background, I feel is really beneficial in my current role. And everyone will have their own path, but I think it is important to take yourself out of your comfort zone and try different things. Yeah, great points. Well, thank you very much. I mean, this is a great episode. I mean, to be able to touch on your journey, the banking side, that was really interesting for especially listeners that maybe don't know that side of your past, and just your journey through the transition. It's been probably a craziest 10 months in the industry I've had. It's been busy. Quite the time to take over. But I appreciate you doing this, man. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the partnership, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, awesome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you found value in this show, please subscribe to our channel on your preferred platform. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Your support is incredibly appreciated. We also welcome your reviews and feedback, which are crucial in helping us deliver outstanding educational content. Feel free to share your thoughts. A 5-star review would be fantastic if you think we earned it. Lastly, a vital announcement about Backpack Buddies, our chosen charity for 2025. This remarkable organization addresses a hidden hunger issue many are unaware of in British Columbia. While school districts provide meals during school hours, numerous children face food scarcity at home, particularly during the weekends. Backpack Buddies steps in to support these vulnerable children, ensuring they have easy to prepare, familiar food for weekends. This is achieved through collaborations with schools and an extensive distribution network. Your contribution can make a significant difference. With just $20, you can give a child in need a food bag from Backpack Buddies filled with enough meals and snacks to sustain them over the weekend and more. Once again, thank you for listening and see you on the next one.